Well, hello. That was a video I haven't used in a while, the intro video. So I didn't time the sipping of the coffee just right. Got to have the coffee before you do a live stream. Couple things. One, to get this out of the way, there's a new episode of Data Driven out there. And if you go to datadriven.tv, I will post it here, show you on the screen. See, we've had quite a number of episodes lately. This one was just a short little fun thing where it started off as, how would an AI start off as a discussion of how would an AI voice handle a tongue twister? And since it was November 5th and I just rewatched V for Vendetta, I gave Bailey the chance to read this long speech where the title character reads out a whole thing that not quite a tongue twister, but there's a lot of things in here. Of course, since Data Driven is itself an alliteration, I figured I would give a shout out to one of the more famous alliterations out there. And then, secondly, this is the new episode that launched last night, and this was Brennan Lamy on entrepreneurship and data engineering in the Web3 era. Highly recommend you check it out. I know as soon as you hear Web3, if you're like me, you're probably like, "Uh-oh, he's still in business." No, Web3 is about more than the metaverse and about more than just cryptocurrency and blockchain. There's a lot more to it. And I still believe that while it is still early, I wouldn't write it off. There was a time when people wrote off the internet because it was quote unquote useless, or it was just kids putting together web pages. Sounds absolutely insane to say that in the year of our Lord 2023, but people did say that, so another thing. First off, I should probably introduce myself. My name is Frank Lavinia, and I am a podcaster, blogger, and live streamer, as well as someone who does a lot of speaking events. In fact, I'll be speaking next week at a panel discussion on artificial intelligence in the government in DC. It's the Red Hat Government Symposium. I will make sure I promote that event. You can check it out if you're in DC. Come by and say hi. And that's then the other thing I want to show. Speaking of books, I know I mentioned books. I've been asked to review a book for Pact called 50 Algorithms That Every Developer Must Know. So far, so good. I like it. It's definitely it's good to understand the fundamentals. And I think that the fundamentals of computer science, let's be real, they can be very dry, right? And I think this is what drives away a lot of people who would come to learn to code, and then when they get a degree, they're kind of driven away from that. You have to remember that code of all kinds, whether it's AI, whether it's a chatbot, whether it's an app on your phone, it all has to go down to some kind of low level where it becomes, you're basically instructing semiconductors to flip a switch on or flip a switch off. And at that level of atomic level, I guess strictly speaking, it's an electron level, but I think you know where I was going with that. There are some very just strange abstract concepts. And then as you go further up the stack, there's also different concepts and things like that. And I think this is no different for AI in that regard. To that end, there's actually a really cool deal right now on Humble Bundle. And again, I get no money from Humble Bundle. Like, I just love what they do. There's a couple of good book deals going on, and I thought I would share. And the reason I love sharing those, can't talk. The reason I love sharing these is because there are people who may not be able to afford. Let me turn off the chat thing. Some of these technology books are rather expensive, but what's really great about this, here, let's pick out this one, Programming Mega Bundle, right? And they're ebooks. So for approximately, how much is it? So for $18, you get 30 books. This is 40 algorithms every programmer should know. I guess the new edition, they added 10 more. Just a lot of good stuff in here. The Art of Writing Efficient Programs for less than the cost of one of these books from any other vendor. You can kind of do this as well. Support a charity. And I think that's important and really good stuff. In fact, this week they have really, if you're looking for technical books, as I do, as anyone can tell, or anyone that follows me on LinkedIn or any kind of social media or knows me personally, you all know that I am pretty hardcore about Humble Bundle rocks. That's right. That is correct, sir. I've tricked Andy into buying a lot of things from Humble Bundle too. Andy, if you want to join the stream, say the word. I'll paste the link over. So here is there's a point to this. Yeah, so if you want to get into networking and things like that, I'm a big believer in reading a lot and continuous improvement. I think anyone that is saw that I got another certification today, took another class. I am constantly doing. Oh, so you're content to watch? That's fine. That's fine. Andy Leonard is doing some awesome things. Post in the chat information on your what you're doing. Is it this month at PASS? How many certifications does this make? This makes 182. Fortunately, LinkedIn does the counting for me. So I'm hoping to get to 190 before the end of the calendar year, but you know, it's important. I think this gets into what I was kind of talking about briefly was, you know, there's a lot of things that this, oh, here we go. This is Andy. All right, I have to find a way to click that. Andy, if you could paste that into the Teams channel that I got with you, that way I can click it. Because if I click it here, it just shows it. But Andy's he's awesome. He speaks at PASS, almost every year. Hopefully we'll get some, give a thumbs up in the comments below if you want to see him rock and share some behind the scenes PASS footage from a live stream. So let's go here. And let me minimize myself. Yep. So he's designing an execution framework for Azure Data Factory. All good stuff. What's this? Master of the Fundamentals of Azure Data Factory. Is this a course? Oh, very cool. Live one-day training. You get to meet Andy like in person. So let me drag this in here. I'm sure we'll do this. Oh, you're doing this live. Very cool. I knew you were doing this. I wasn't sure where. So December 1st to the 5th. Definitely very cool. So definitely check it out. And I'm not sharing it for some reason. Or am I? I am sharing it. Too many monitors. Just the 5th. Oh, okay. Well, online and in person, just the 5th. Very cool. One day live and one day online. Very cool. And I say this because I've attended training that to this day I still think about. I read books to this day I still think about, like in terms of their influence on me. And here's a book that I want to show you. Hey, anytime, man. Andy says thanks for sharing. Here's a book that has been a huge influence on me and my professional career, but not necessarily in a way that has been obvious. Let me put the chat back up. This book, I lost the original some time ago, and this is an old book. This book is so old. It has a little container here for a floppy disk. And when this came out, this was written by Robin Williams, illustration, presumably not that Robin Williams. And here is a kind of a snippet of it, right? It's the idea of font design and how it went from being kind of very strict lines and corporate to being very kind of they use an interesting word in here, but basically ugly fonts, grunge fonts, and things like that. and how this impacts kind of graphic design. And to kids today, where you can just download a font, you know, anywhere, right? Um, and No, it's not that Robin Williams. So here's the about page for the author. This book was a huge influence when I did a lot of web design, when I did a lot of design like that, because it really took advantage of the idea of um, um, breaking the rules of established typography. And go back, keep in mind, this was the 90s, right? So in the early 90s, Wired magazine was notorious for this. So what Omni magazine did for popular science in the 80s, I would say Wired did for kind of technology, um, um, and web culture, I guess, Web 1.0. Um, but it basically kind of talks about these decorative like fonts, very cool designs, very cool kind of artwork to go with it to showcase that these ugly typefaces or these imperfect typefaces were how they were influential in a lot of designs. And what's interesting was, at least for me, was kind of the idea that you could have in a very orderly digital kind of world this chaotic experience, this chaotic design, and this or reviewer basically talked about how this was a paradigm shift because people were revolting or rebelling against the structured order of desktop publishing. Although, if you remember early desktop publishing efforts, when people went hog wild with like 7 or 8 different fonts per page, this was a very influential book. If you look at an Internet Archive on the history of on some of the sites I built on Frank's World and some of the other stuff I've done, in terms of experimenting and things like that. Um, it definitely some of the sites I built were very kind of, I don't want to say postmodern, but kind of took advantage of the kind of the grunge font use, which is not now it's nostalgic. Then it was kind of cutting edge, but it was very interesting, and it brought me joy when somehow this was popped up in my feed, because the original book, heaven only knows where it is. Um, but Yeah, I even had the fonts. Yeah, I had the disc. I put the disc into my Macintosh. Um, I wonder if this style of graphic design is going to make a comeback. I don't know. I wouldn't say it's very 90s. It was kind of very avant-garde in the 90s. Obviously, I think even Wired magazine kind of walked back some of their chaotic stuff, and there was a lot of other magazines and other print things that really kind of took that style but didn't execute it as well as on the magazine. Ironically, I'm back on a Macintosh some 20 plus years later, so who knows? But I mostly wanted to get it for one, nostalgia, and two, the font names that are in there, because there were some fonts. So ultimately, what I'm working on, kind of back of the mind, is kind of a Frank's World will be 30 in 2025, which is kind of crazy to imagine. So I'm piecing together, and this is the first time I think I'm saying this publicly, kind of a limited run podcast on kind of like the history of the web and things like that, all in the context of that. And if you're interested in helping, contributing, or being a guest, there's definitely people I want to reach out to who have been very influential to me in my not just my career, but kind of my meanderings through the world over the years. And I mean that in kind of the best way, right? Like, there was a time we mentioned on the latest podcast, Data Driven, where Andy was talking about how I was a designer. Well, that's kind of true. I was my parents would not would not sign off on a college degree in graphic design. But computer science was hard enough of a pitch to them, right? But the whole idea was, what excited me about computer science was I could take kind of my um, interest in graphic design, and kind of um, use it in a computer, right? I was never going to be the type of guy who in a small apartment would have had an art studio. Wasn't that into it. But the fact that I can have it in a computer, which was a Mac actually, and kind of do art and design and desktop publishing and web design, right, was very cool. And we take this for granted now, but I mean, there was a time when that was not a given. Excuse me for the coffee sip. So with that, I will kind of close out my my rambling and kind of talk about how for $25 for 16 books, this could be the book that I don't want to say changes your life, but alters the way you think, which then would change your life. Did reading Blip in a Continuum like change my life? I mean, kind of. I mean, I was making very interesting designs. One of my sites, no joke, was called Schnauzer Space, and at the time I had a Schnauzer dog, and this was the '90s. So keep in mind, this was the '90s. Everybody had everybody and their dog literally had a website. And so this was my attempt to, what would a cyberpunk uh, website for your dog look like? And that was ultimately Schnauzer Space. And some of the following iterations of that site took a lot of inspiration from this book. There were a few other sites, a few other projects that just never took off the ground, but took a lot of inspiration from this book. Those little projects ended up changing the direction of my career. And dare I say personal enrichment too, I guess. I don't know. But big fan of books. And the fact that you can pick up tons of these books, is going to read microservices with Spring Boot 3 and Spring Cloud going to change your life? Nah, I mean, maybe. This one I'm real interested in, actually. Docker for microservices. I mean, it doesn't really matter, right? I don't know how many books I've read over the years, or let alone partially read over the years, but the good ones kind of stick with you. And with that, I think it's a good theme to end the stream on. Obviously, I want to go into the details of AI and what OpenAI announced yesterday. But I want to go through that material a little more. But even my venture into AI, it goes back to my freshman year. No, it's junior or senior year of college, actually, when I took a Prolog course, and it was called Building Artificial Intelligence Systems, or things like that. And keep in mind, kids, it was not the type of AI we see today. It was kind of like an inference engine, probably a lot closer to recommendation engines, right? Because it was the idea, given a family tree, can you infer certain types of relationships? If I remember that final assignment, and I remember that banging out that final assignment with another student, because not only did I have a Mac at this point, but I had an old 386, which most of you kids probably even know what that is, but it was a Windows PC, Windows 3.1 era PC. And the software language would kind of sort of work on the university mainframe, but it was really written for Windows DOS and that sort of thing. So I remember banging away at that in my dorm room on like my old 386 Compaq, which again, that's a company that doesn't exist anymore. At least, no, they got bought by somebody else. But see, these are the kind of tech stories I want to have in it, because it's not going to be just about Frank's World. It'll be kind of like 30 years ago, the web was a very different place. Arguably 10 years ago, the web was a very different place. And, having a domain name that long produces some interesting side effects. What I really want to do, actually, was there's a bot on the homepage of Frank's World that is not ChatGPT enabled, despite what a lot of people think. So that's one of my projects, is to kind of get that. And do I reuse the Bailey character from Data Driven, or do I do something new? Who knows? But let me know in the comments. I'm in that pensive phase of year where I start thinking about next year and things like that, and projects to undertake and things like that. On top of the awesome things we're doing at Red Hat, we're doing some amazing things at Red Hat, because AI is largely driven by innovations in open source, OpenAI notwithstanding, and how important open source is to this technology. This technology is going to be very influential. The decisions we make today are going to echo throughout history for at least the next 5-6 decades. So every step we make today would be very conscious of the ethics and fairness and just civil rights, which is, something that I think that you see a lot of the political work in this space. Their solution tends to be heavily on kind of regulations and things like that. But I don't know. We'll see. So with that, I'm going to end the stream. Remember, kids, stay in school, read as much as you can. Um, and until then, until next time, keep getting smarter because the AI will. And that sounds rather morbid. Have a good one, everyone.